So we will kick things off. Welcome to your first session of the day. I don't know how many of you were able to attend yesterday for the workshops, but conference is in full bloom now. So we're happy to have you here to start your morning. My name is Andrew Lamers. I'm going to be hosting the Mapping Your Career, Professional Development in GIS. It's going to be a discussion panel with our three experts here to my right. Give a chance for everybody to introduce themselves, but first, I wanted to really call out what this presentation is going to be like. Discussion panels mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I wanted to call out, we're going to spend some time giving everybody a chance to introduce themselves. We're going to be talking about the big picture. What does it mean to develop your career in GIS? What does professional development mean? Then we're going to spend a lot of time getting into the weeds. What does it mean to advance in GIS? What does it mean to put your resume together? How do you interview for a position? What sort of jobs to apply for? And then we're going to close out with a little bit of leadership philosophy, give everyone a chance to kind of talk about what it means to be an advocate, a mentor, and a leader in GIS, because that's ultimately the goal we want to get to in GIS as we develop our careers. How do we get to be a leader in the industry? And then want to leave time for some Q&A. We don't have a field mic to run around with, so just use your biggest voice to fill the space. As I mentioned, my name is Andrew Lamers. This is a quick about me, but this panel's really not about me. I will call out that I'm on the board of directors and the private sector representative as I work for United Health Group, technically Optum, which is a subsidiary of UHG. If you want to get to know more about me, just track me down during the conference. Happy to talk with folks. And I'll be running the resume review session tomorrow morning, bright and early at 7:30. And with that, I will move into our panelists. So I will give everybody a couple minutes just to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Huber. I'm currently a GIS administrator at Three Rivers Park District. On the side, I also freelance for a company out of Bellingham, Washington called Blue Water GIS, who focuses on a lot of conservation work and environmental work. I graduated with a degree in geology, which is not the most orthodox way of getting into GIS. But ended up getting a GIS certificate, which we'll touch on kind of my journey a little bit later. In addition to all of that, I am a local representative on the Minnesota GIS LIS Consortium's board. I highly recommend being a board member in the future. I'm also on a committee, so volunteering for committee is another plug for you guys. I'm the communications chair, so if you ever see me taking pictures around the conference, I'm not a weirdo. I'm taking pictures for everybody. We have a Flickr account, so please submit your photos. And then I'm also on the professional development committee with Andrew.
Awesome. And next I've got Heather up.
Yes, I'm Heather Amsbach. I'm a supervising engineering technician for Hennepin County, which is also not a typical GIS career. I was originally a teacher, so I was a middle school earth science, outdoor education, life science teacher. So this is my second career. And different committees that I'm on professional development committee for GIS LIS Consortium. I'm on the conference committee, and then I'm on the K-12 education committee, as well as spring workshops. So I do a lot of stuff.
And last but not least, our third panelist today is going to be Meredith.
Hi, I'm Meredith Carrega. That's me hiding under all that stuff in the picture there, living the glamorous life of field collection. So this is also a career change for me. This is not my first career either. My career trajectory has kind of been like a pinball machine. So I first went to school at Purdue University, got a degree in atmospheric sciences, thinking I would be heading into meteorology and working in that field. But at the time, I was also heavily involved in a hobby that kind of morphed into a job. And so for about 13 years, I spent a lot of time working in the world of professional dog sports, teaching people how to have fun, training their dogs, working their brains, working their bodies. And then COVID hit. So I am the story you hear fairly frequently now. I think COVID hit and people decided they wanted to make a change. That was me. So when deciding what to do, I landed in GIS and I went to school at Front Range Community College in Colorado because that's where we lived at the time. Got a certificate because they offered a variety of programs in GIS at FRCC. You could do a certificate, you could do an associate's degree, you could do a bachelor's degree. I decided to start with a certificate and see where that took me. And that took me far enough to get my job at Three Rivers when we moved to Minnesota. So I've been working at Three Rivers with Amanda for about 2 years now, so still fairly new into it. The imposter syndrome is real, sitting up here being called an expert. But in my spare time, I'm still involved in the dog stuff. I serve on a few committees working as an independent contractor for the United States Dog Agility Association. So that's me, very different.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Before we jump into our first topic, I wanted to get a volume check. Can you guys hear us okay? I know I'm standing and belting out, but didn't know if the microphones were picking us up. Good deal.
I don't think we had this one on. Do we want it on, or can you hear us? You're good? Okay.
I was gonna say, I think it's on.
Okay. I think we turned it off.
Yeah, it's
Oh, it is on?
just
Okay.
quiet.
Okay.
Well, good deal. So everybody got to do a little bit of an intro about themselves, but I really want to try to give our audience a reason, not why they should listen to you, but, a little bit more detail so that they can really kind of empathize with where you're coming from on some of the topics and maybe draw a connection so that as you're talking and maybe later in the conference, they can think, oh, I wanted to follow up on that or have something to, really connect with their personal career journey to yours. So with that, I was kind of hoping everybody could talk a little bit more about their educational experience, the degrees, the certificates, and just kind of how you found GIS from an academic setting. And Amanda, I'm going to start with you just because you're right on my right. So if you could talk about, how you found GIS and decided to get your undergraduate. Well, you did geology, so
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, it's kind of unorthodox. I went to school for geology, very passionate in that. And one of the students in my class was like, I was coming to graduation pretty soon. And he was like, hey, GIS is what's hiring. Like anything geology, like you have to get a GIS. And I was like, oh, like, I don't know. So I was like, maybe I should start taking some GIS courses. And so I took one of my intro courses at UMD up here in Duluth, of course. And intro is obviously very hard to get into because it's very textual based book learning. And you're like, I need to like touch, I'm a visual person. So learning the software, touching it, feeling it, seeing the projection change when I'm clicking buttons. So it really clicked for me when I got into like GIS 1. I was like, oh, I really love being able to like solve real world problems. A little bit of a background, I have a passion for graphic design also. When I was going to school, it was either geology or graphic design. So it works out great because map making has cartography and I'm able to kind of dabble on different strengths I feel that I have and kind of apply that. So once I got into GIS 1 and like learning that I can make maps and make maps pretty and like really pushing myself, I was like, okay, I'm sold. So I declared the degree, getting a certificate. It was like only a couple classes difference from getting a minor. So I was like, here we are. I was already getting a communications minor as well. So I was just like, you know what? I might as well just get the certificate and see where this takes me. And it just felt right in my gut. So flash forward, I was like, okay, how do I get into the world of GIS? UMD has a really great program. It was called the GAC back in the day, but it's now USpatial. I started working for the university, working with some of my professors, got to work with some of my actual old geology professors, which was really, really cool to be able to have that working relationship, not just from the classroom setting, but actually in a collaboration setting. Worked on a project from Venus, cleaning up data for that to put to the USGS. Was able to work with some Antarctica data, being able to like promote that so they could do their rapid ice drilling that one of our professors does as part of his research opportunities. So those are really great opportunities to be able to kind of like learn what the real world GIS even is and really dip my toes into not just having a textbook telling me, here's the next step, and actually being like, okay, now I have like every opportunity of how I could look and analyze this data or clean up this ugly data. How do I like, do this? And so that was the real proof, was being able to do real world GIS. Going from there, I was able to start with a technician position at the city of Maple Grove. I was a storm pond technician, so hiking down into storm ponds, dealing with every type of bug, poison ivy, leaf, whatever you name it. But we used a GIS collection platform along with an asset management to be able to inspect different stormwater ponds, which was really important for flooding in the metro area. So going from that, applied to Three Rivers, my current position, did not get the position. I was like, okay, like that's okay. Ended up taking an internship with the city of Brooklyn Park. which many of you know, John Nergy has a fantastic internship program, shameless plug, and was really able to like give me the knowledge that I really needed for the real world. A lot of that was like server management, back-end administration, understanding what a database was, those things that I just hadn't learned in class curriculum or anything leading up into my career. Kind of being what it is like to be an administrator in a way. And ironically, the position for Three Rivers opened up again after that. And so I applied again because I was like, you know what? Shameless, I'm going to apply again, get rejected again, so be it. Got the position, and I've now been there for 8 years. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Long nutshell, sorry.
A big nutshell.
No, that's great. I mean, that's exactly what we're looking for. Heather, you made a career change. So started in academia, K through 12. So
Yeah.
still academics.
Academics.
How did you go about switching careers, and then how has the certificate that you did, the program that you did, how have you leveraged that then into building a career in GIS?
So yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was in college, but I was like, outdoor education's fun, and I love geology. So I did actually have a geology minor, but I just did earth science because I liked rocks. And I was just like, whatever, I'll just I was not one of those people that knew what I wanted to do when I went in, and I was just like, well, this is fun, I'm going to do that. That's fun, I'm going to do that. And then at the end of my college career, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get a job. So I did. My sister was a teacher, and I really liked the teaching aspect of it. So I had earth science teaching, middle school science teaching. I had a geology minor. I don't know if UMD, I went to UMD. I don't know if they had a GIS. I meant to look, and I forgot. Email was just like starting to be a thing when I was in college. So I feel like they didn't have it. Maybe they did, and I just never heard about it. So I graduated. I worked as a teacher for about 15 years doing various things. And then I was frustrated with public school politics and was just kind of looking for something. I had done, Google Earth was a big thing around that time. And I had started pulling that into my lessons, and I was doing geocaching, and that seemed really fun. So I had a friend that worked for Hennepin County, and she was just hiring interns for the summer, and I had the summers off because I was a teacher. So she's like, well, just do an internship, see if you like it, and I can maybe hire you full time, doing GIS. And I was like, I have nothing to lose, so what the heck, sure. So I did it that summer. I was in asset management. I did GPS collection, very basic intro into GIS, adding features, doing inspections for assets similar to what Amanda was doing. And it just was really fun. I was doing cartography on a pretty basic level, thought that was fun. So I thought, you know what, this is a great thing to jump into. I'll see what it's like. So I quit teaching, and I just started getting trained on the job at first. So I probably worked for the county for a couple of years in that department before I decided I want to learn more about this. I'm sure there's more out there. I just had this tiny window. And so I got a GIS certificate at, it's not Itasca Community College anymore. It is used to be Itasca Community College. 2-year program. It was all online. Hennepin County did tuition reimbursement. So my work actually ended up paying for my education. So that was great. I just spread it out so that it, covered however much they would pay. That's how many classes I took. And that was an eye opener. So it was a lot of cartography. It was still ArcMap. So, it was right when ArcPro was coming out. So I got that certificate. I really got into map making, cartography stuff at work. And then I switched departments, and I was really able to kind of help drive where our department was going. We had a lot of GIS needs, and our GIS department is pretty small in public works. So I just started taking on more GIS tasks and taking on stuff from other departments. So that just became kind of on the job training. And then I just realized that there's still a lot more out there. I knew that there was master's programs. I really wanted to get more into ArcPro. Technology was changing, and I felt like I'd kind of come in at the tail end of an old technology. So I started looking for master's programs and decided to go to St. Mary's University. And they have kind of a data engineering GIS. You could just get a certificate, but I just decided to get the full master's so it was data intelligence and geoanalytics, and it had a data engineering certificate and a GIS certificate. certificate. So that was great for me because it kind of gave me a better knowledge of the back end. So database management, which I was not familiar with because I wasn't in our full GIS department, but I kind of knew how it worked. So that was really great. Worked a couple years there. Just wanted to get more experience. So I left the county for a time, worked for Met Council. Am I like skipping to the road to GIS? Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Sorry. Moving on. So I worked for Metropolitan Council, and I think, and I could ask this person who hired me is sitting right here, but I really got the impression that, so I did not feel qualified for that job, but I was really just looking for more experience in the GIS world and didn't feel like I was getting that at the county. And I really felt like I was hired more for my just willingness to like do research and like figure things out and problem solve. So the point is that I might not have had that experience like in education or in my work, but I think just having like the willingness to like figure things out and like be creative and all of that was the reason that I got hired there. And I learned a ton in my time in that period. And then I ended up coming back to the county. Sorry. And I really had a great experience there doing it, and now I'm more asset management and doing more of our back-end GIS stuff for that department. So it kind of helped my career evolve by just getting more of that education, finding careers that like gave me that experience, and then being able to apply it.
Yeah. I had forgotten that you started a GIS job before you went to school for GIS.
Yes.
So,
yep.
So then that's different from Meredith, I think. I think you started with GIS in school looking for that second career.
Mm-hmm.
If you could talk about kind of why you picked that certificate program, or I mean, what drew you to GIS from your previous careers?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it was kind of the stereotypical, I like maps, which, we all know there's so much more to GIS than just making maps, but it often is that spark, I think, that gets that initial interest in looking at this field and going a bit deeper into it. So when I was deciding to make the career change, the things I was thinking about was that, I needed to make the change fairly quickly. I needed to be something that I would enjoy as well. I had spent so long with my hobby being my job that I didn't want to go down that route again, but I still needed to do something that I would have a good time doing. And so honestly, I just went to FRCC's website, Front Range Community College in Colorado, and was looking through all the programs they offered, because I also didn't want to spend a lot of time and money going back to school again, since schooling is expensive. We all know that. And I didn't want to be waiting years and years to make that career transition again while going to school. So I was just looking through the options of what they offered, and I saw GIS, and I said, oh, there's a little guy in their picture is sitting at a table with a map, and he looks so happy. What is this? So, and like I said in my intro, they offer a certificate, they offer an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree program. So you could kind of pick and choose which option you wanted to go for. And so I said, I'll start with the certificate, see where that takes me, and go from there. So yeah, it was about 2 years of going to school to get that certificate. They have a really good program at FRCC. It's definitely more of an overview of GIS. It's not super deep, just being a certificate, but it gets you the basics, it gets you started. And they do a good job of, building students through their internship programs and offering opportunities through local and state agencies to work with internships and get you some work experience. So I definitely took advantage of that while I was in school, to be able to learn more about GIS itself, as well as, where it's applied, how it's being used, and as a resume builder, of course, trying to get into a new field. So, yeah.
I keep meaning to include an interactive poll here so we can kind of get a gauge for the audience and where you're coming from. So I didn't do that. So if we get a show of hands here, I'm just kind of curious where we want to go with some of the conversation and answers. How many current students do we have in the audience?
Hey.
Awesome. Emerging professionals? Great. No. And then I guess just curious observers, kind of mid-career and just kind of interested in what our folks have to say about professional development. Perfect. Did see a lot of students. So Heather, there was a lot of information in there that we went through really fast. If you could come back to grad school, actually. So when you enrolled at St. Mary's, maybe even before that, I guess, talk us through a little bit about what made you pick the St. Mary's program, and then what was your goal with going to that program? Just elaborate a little more on that.
Yeah, so I was looking for obviously an affordable program, and one that I could do mostly online because I still had to have a full-time job. So at the time, the program was asynchronous. It was 1 day a week. We had to go to the Minneapolis campus. St. Mary's is based in Winona, but they do have a Minneapolis campus, so that was important for me. It was somewhere I could get to, not have to drive 2 hours. It was a 5-hour period, but it was still doable. And then I just needed to be able to spread out the program. So like I said, Hennepin County did tuition reimbursement. So I just needed to be able to make sure that I could afford it basically. And I wanted it to be relevant to what was, I loved my certificate program at Itasca, but I felt like it wasn't like future forward. So I was learning the technology at the time, but I wasn't learning like where it was advancing or, things like that. So I was really, I felt like I had kind of an obstacle with not knowing a lot of the database background stuff. I wasn't working for the GIS department at the county. I am a GIS person for my department that works with the GIS department. So I just wanted a better understanding of the data stuff, where it was coming from, how it was being stored, all that sort of thing. So and when I was just looking, that one kept coming up. I knew that people that worked at Hennepin County had gone there. There's a lot of people like our GIS people, a lot of those people had gone to that. So it felt like a valid program. A lot of those online things, you're like, is this real or is this just like a thing that's on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever? So that was a big decision for me. And then what was the other part?
If you had, you kind of touched on it, the overlying goal of why you enrolled in the program and what drew you to St. Mary's.
So I just wanted to be able to move our department forward also. So I had goals for our department as well because we were able to continue to keep growing in our department. And I had, I wanted us to be able to report out our data like with web applications, and I wanted to be able to just make it accessible to be able to collaborate with different departments and have it not just be on paper. And that was how our system was currently working, be able to show upper management, what we were doing, and just have a really easy interactive experience. And I didn't have much experience in that area. So that was kind of where I was going.
So, and then on the flip side, Amanda, you're approaching 10 years in the industry. I know you haven't attended a graduate program, but kind of curious on how maybe your thoughts of grad school from when you were first graduating to now with your experience, how's that perspective changed? And then, what's your thought around grad school as somebody who's established a career?
It's a loaded question. The standards for applications right now with what our job market and what a lot of HR applications require or say they require, a lot of them will be like, hey, we want grad school, we want the top of the top. I do think in some instances, of course, depending on the degree you're going for, the job that you're going for, you can substitute that grad program and prove yourself with real world experience. Having someone in the industry who's been working in the industry for multiple years, has multiple projects that they can prove, that they know GIS, they know the ins, outs, ups, downs, they're staying abreast in the current technology. I almost, in my personal belief, and this might be contrary to a lot of people, that maybe sometimes outweighs grad school. I would also say, don't be afraid to apply for a job that even if you don't feel like you're fully equipped for, or like what their requirements are. The worst that they do is they say no. But a lot of times you'll be surprised because a lot of times it's not the decision makers or the hiring department that's making those requirements. It's another department that's setting that in place. So if you are kind of one of those people that's like, I don't know if I want to go to grad school, but I have all this experience and I feel like I could still go for this job, do it. I know that Personally, there's also a statistic kind of as a segue that a lot of females don't apply for positions that they don't feel like they're qualified for. Males tend to apply for those more frequently and feel as though they can go for it, where females are more hesitant. Break that stereotype. That's something I did. There's so many jobs I applied for that I was like, I don't know if I'm qualified, but like, I'm not going to be embarrassed to apply. Like, I'm going to at least give it a shot. I had interviews. We got to talk it out. We got to meet one-on-one. Like, whether I was the decided candidate or not, that's, totally up to the hiring manager. But at that point, like, get your foot in the door. I think that touched on what I was looking for with a couple accessories. Yeah.
No, you're good. And we're actually doing really well on time too. So I'm actually gonna step into section 2 here. Where I kind of want to get into the weeds a little bit, talking about, I have an understanding of who the panelists are and kind of what a little bit of their background is. What does it look like now to have that experience and start developing your career in GIS? First bullet point we have here is actually something I like to call opportunity events. This is, a project that maybe led to a promotion or a comment from a friend that, got a brainstorming activity with a friend that, led you to some success in your career. One of the illustrations I like to use, this is just one of those funny things you see on LinkedIn once in a while, but I couldn't come up with something better, so I wanted to use this. Meredith, you mentioned, going to community college in Colorado. So I'm curious a little bit about how you ended up in the Minnesota GIS community. And then if you have sort of a fork in the road or an opportunity event that maybe led you to Three Rivers Park District or has led you to stay with Three Rivers Park District, I'd love to hear about that as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I know when he showed us that image there in our preview of the presentation, I said, yeah, I really identify with that.
Yeah.
Having gone from the bachelor's degree to the hobby job now into GIS, I've really followed a variety of paths to get where I am right now. So yeah, Colorado is where I was at the time. Honestly, never planned to move elsewhere. I am from the Midwest originally. I grew up in Indiana. Went to school at Purdue University, like I said, but we ended up in Colorado for about 13 years. Decided to move back to the Midwest, primarily for family reasons, so we could all be close to family again and help them with some health issues. But we didn't want to go back to Indiana. So looking at our options of where we could move, we really like, outdoorsy activities, going hiking, camping, and things like that. And, Minnesota just has so many opportunities to spend some time outside. So, and they have great healthcare as well, which is important for our family. So we all ended up in Minnesota together. I started searching for jobs pretty much the week we moved here. It was a little bit of right place at the right time, I think, because Three Rivers had just posted a seasonal position opening to have someone help them out for a few months with some data backlog. So I applied to that, did the interview, worked there for a few months, decided we all liked each other well enough. For some reason, they wanted to keep me around, and they offered me a permanent position. So that's how I've been there for a couple years. So yeah, a little bit of luck, a little bit of, schooling and education and internships to kind of show that I have at least enough knowledge to do the job. And yeah, some right place at the right time, I think, getting me here to Minnesota at Three Rivers. And I'm very glad to have landed where I did. I think it's a great place, and I'm learning so much from Amanda and everybody else there. My education with the certificate, it was good, but like I said, it was just kind of a broad overview of what is GIS and the basics of it. So certainly a lot of continuing education happening on the job, both with GIS itself, as well as how Three Rivers, likes to do things as an organization. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. Heather, you mentioned earlier hopping from the county to Metro GIS, back to the county. I think job hopping and, changing jobs is part of what people do in their careers. It's not uncommon anymore. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the events or mindset that led you to apply for a new job, and then, what actually brings you back to an employer, for some folks that, maybe left an employer but want to leave that door open or that bridge there.
Yeah, so when once I got my master's degree, I felt like I could do a lot more for our department, and I was really looking to just reclassify. I wasn't really looking for a raise. I just wanted to reclassify my job classification. which historically the county did. I'd reclassified a couple times in previous, just from like one technician level to another. You just had to prove that you were doing more work than you were. And I kept taking on work that was not part of my original job description. So I tried to do the reclassification and they turned it down. They just decided they weren't reclassifying anyone. I didn't really feel like the position fit my position. And I think there was just a series of things that made me feel just kind of less valued as an employee. And so I was just kind of looking for, I wanted to make sure that I could still grow with my professional development. And I didn't feel like I was getting that and I wouldn't be able to get that. So that's really, I just sort of casually started looking. And then when I found the position at Met Council, that just was really like everything that I was looking to learn. And I wanted to expand my abilities. And it seemed just like a kind of the perfect opportunity at the time. Eventually, they did hire for my position, but then they reorganized our department. And they created a position that was still in the same classification scale, but it was higher, it was supervisor position, and then they asked me to come back. And I really wasn't intending on coming back, but then I sort of was like, well, I'm expensive now, and I had some demands, and they were like, okay. And so then I had to think about it. And so the opportunity to go back provided a lot of opportunity for me to, again, grow in my career. And to be, there had been a lot of things that I felt needed changes before I left, and they were willing to make those changes if I came back. So it really was, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy the job that I was at. It was just, another venue on that little chart that I could expand on. So it was a hard decision to go back, but I ended up just taking that into consideration. So
yeah. Awesome. Amanda, you mentioned that you've been at Three Rivers Park District for 8 years now. I mean, once you've been at a company for that long, what does it look like? Again, thinking about this chart, it's still not just a straight line. What sort of events stand out in your mind over your 8 years at Three Rivers?
There's been a lot of growing. So when you first start a job, you feel like you're learning a lot, like you're taking everything and you're soaking it in. And then there comes a part in your career, at least I can speak for myself, that you end up feeling like you are very confident in everything you're doing and you're providing an asset to the company. The company's no longer giving you all the things, you are now providing it an amenity. And there comes a point in your career that you go, not only what can I do for my job, but what can my job do for me? And that's been a recent philosophy, thanks to John, actually, where we had a heart to heart. And he's like, you're at a really great cornerstone of your career. Like you're switching to being a professional of not just like being like, okay, I'm constantly learning, growing. And of course I still am. Like our technology with Esri is constantly changing every quarter. And trying to stay abreast with that and learning and keeping my education and learning everything new. But there's still a point that you're like, you have to take a moment to reflect on your career and be like, is this where I want to be? I've been there in our current job role, I feel like a very long time. 8 years is a long time to be there. And I've loved my time with Three Rivers. There's definitely things that, you always wish that were different. And there's always things that you're like, this is what keeps me here. And this is like what keeps me motivated. And weighing those balances, having that internal check of like, where am I? Is this job doing me satisfaction is the first question. And 2, is there another job that I feel would be also satisfying? As Heather mentioned, like if you do leave a job, you do come into a new job with like, I'm more expensive. Like you are, it's a real thing. You do have the power to negotiate your salary in this current world. Let's all be real. Everything's really expensive. When you've been at a job for a while, the current world's cost lines up pretty evenly with what you're making after being there for a while. And you start to evaluate multiple different ways. So I guess those are a couple philosophies from an old dog who's been in my company. I feel like 8 years is kind of an old dog.
She's younger than me, and she says she's an old dog.
Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone. Been in one company for a very long time. I have friends who, are also in GIS and they're jumping every like year and a half, 2 years. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're chasing the salary. I don't know if they build fulfilling relationships with their companies or with the people at their companies, whereas I find fulfillment in my job with the people I work with too. But it's balanced. Each person's different and to each their own.
You actually gave me a great segue out of the opportunity that's job searching, so I had to take advantage of that. And you touched on it there too. I feel like right around that 3-year mark is where you finally, I'm comfortable. I know this job. I have a better understanding of the people and the organization I work with, and now I'm thinking about what's that next step from that original position that I was hired into. So as people are thinking about job searching, I'm actually really shocked right now. These are old. This is from a slide I used with the spring workshop, but I gotta say I've probably seen 5, 6, 7 mid-level GIS job postings in Minnesota in the last week. So apparently GIS stands for Guaranteed Income Source, which is great to hear. But as we're thinking about jobs and what kind of jobs you want to apply for and search for, I'm going to go to you on this, Meredith. You talked about how you wanted to come to Minnesota. You had your GIS certificate, so you were looking for entry-level jobs. Was there anything that stuck out about the Three Rivers job posting that drew you to that?
Probably a couple different things. So before we moved, I had been looking at job postings for probably a few months when we kind of knew we were going to be moving this way, because I wanted to see what was out there. What companies are hiring, what are they looking for, what sort of qualifications are they looking for in a candidate. And so when I saw the Three Rivers posting, there's probably 2 big things that drew me to it. The first was that it's in a park district. And I really love being outdoors, hiking, camping, outdoor recreation is kind of a passion of mine. And so being able to work in that industry was kind of important to me if that was an opportunity I could have. And then the other thing about the position is that it was a seasonal position. It was designed to be temporary. And so as someone dipping my toes into a new field, knowing that I wanted to go that way, I still honestly felt a little bit of commitment phobia. I didn't want to sign up for a job that was going to be my career for the next 40 years. And so honestly, the seasonal position was kind of attractive, going, well, I'll try it, if they hire me. And then if it's not something I want to stick with, there is that end date, that I could have to move on somewhere else. And so that was a good opportunity. And like I said, well, the end date just kind of went away because we all decided to keep me on permanently. So yeah, it was a good opportunity. And I honestly didn't see a lot of temporary positions being advertised in GIS. There were a few out there that I had seen, in the months that I was looking. So I think that can be a good opportunity as well, whether it's something you want to stick with or whether you want to get some experience maybe in a different area, because I've definitely learned that even if there is something you're not totally passionate about, you can always learn something from it as well. So look for those opportunities too.
That's really interesting. I never thought about the temporary position being ideal.
Yeah.
For me, I would like a position that's full-time, regular, that I can be in as long as I choose to. I never thought about it as like a sampler of what could this job look like.
That's really and that can be really person dependent too, because there are a lot of people who need that permanent position. They need the stability, they need the income, they need the benefits. And so there are pros and cons to those temporary positions too, depending on your life situation.
Heather, Amanda, and I are on the professional development committee together. So because of that, we look at a lot of job postings. We see a lot of verbiage out there and a lot of different types of jobs. Compensation and job postings, there's a lot that goes along with it. It's not just about a salary. It's not just about the organization that you're working for. So whether it's you seeing a job posting, we'll go to Heather on this one, and then Amanda, but as you're looking at postings, or as LinkedIn recruiters reaching out, as they tend to do, is there anything that jumps out to you as this is an opportunity either you're interested in or that you want to forward on because you think it's a great opportunity? Is there anything that stands out in job postings as you're looking at them that really grab your attention in a positive way?
Yeah, I honestly, obviously pay, I'm willing to take a pay cut. So pay for me isn't like the non-negotiable. If there are other benefits And a lot of those benefits are like external collaboration or like opportunities to, I'm a lifelong learner. So if there's anything where I know that I'm going to be able to grow professionally and that there's an option to move up, that is a big deal for me. Obviously, health benefits. Now I'm old, way older than everybody else in here. So I'm the old dog. So it's ideal for me to stay in like a state retirement because I'm not, I'm within, but I don't think that would still be a non-negotiable. So I think like really the benefit for me when I'm looking at job postings is just what is my job going to be? Because what I've learned is it doesn't matter how much you're getting paid. If you don't like what you're doing, it's not fun to be there. You don't want to wake up and go to work every day. So I just kind of look for those extra benefits that are beyond just like the basic salary, compensation, health, and that sort of thing.
Amanda, you run the job board that we have on the Consortium website, right? Is there any like advice that you give to employers when they're posting on there or submit something or something that you look for that gets your attention in a positive way?
Yeah. I'm thinking that, sorry, I'm thinking as I'm thinking, as I'm talking. I feel like, first of all, titles for jobs mean nothing in the GIS industry. They're not standardized. That's something I would love to change at our level of consortium. We have not been able to do that yet. But, like engineers, they have engineer 1, engineer 2, engineer 3. It's very standardized for the most part across the industry. We have GIS administrators, we have GIS technicians, we have GIS managers. Thank you, sorry, segue.
You're gonna get there, but this is okay.
Sorry,
No,
these beautiful terms that mean absolutely nothing in our industry because they all have different, like what you do in each of these roles could be like, you could be a coordinator but doing a technician role. Like that's a bad example, but it's like, it is so wildly different. So really reading the job description, obviously when like a company is promoting or pushing their job to the job board, it's, being clear about what your intent, what the responsibilities are for the job. You don't want to be going in thinking you're going to be an analyst and you're doing data entry the rest of your life. Like, here, please update spreadsheets every single day, every single week. Like that, anybody, teach their own. Some people like that, they can just tune in. But sometimes you need a little bit of variety. And if that's the task, another thing when I'm looking for or looking at jobs or I come across a job is like being around the community. Like I've had a good sense of like, working with different cities or meeting different people's cities and be like, that would be a really fun team to work with. Or I'll pass that along like, hey, I know these people at like the Esri office down in Egan. I just passed a job off to them. And like, they're really, really cool people. It'd be fun to work with them. Or, working with, Eden Prairie, like I know Zach. I'm like, Zach's fun to work with. If they're hiring, that's a great opportunity. Like there's always those networking opportunities too that you can add on, but it also helps to kind of know a little bit about who the hiring people are and what their team is like. And again, I find benefit from having those people connections, but some people feel like I just want to go and do my job, come in, leave. I don't want to do any extra interactions. And so, it kind of depends on what you're looking for in your job.
And that's a great plug for the annual conference too, because since we're all here now is the time that you should be networking, talking with those people, getting to know them so you know what their organization is like, and you might meet a future coworker here. Once you kind of have an idea of the job you're going to be applying for, the next thing that kind of goes into applying for a job is updating your resume. Maybe you haven't done it in 8 long years, or maybe you have one ready to go. Resumes aren't necessarily what gets you the job, but it's certainly what gets eyes on your name and maybe gets your foot in the door. So as you're working on your resume, and Meredith, I'm going to come to you because I think you're the most recent hire of the 3. What sort of things did you do to your resume and write in your resume so that it would appeal to the Three Rivers job that you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just start off by saying that resume writing can be incredibly frustrating, both to do it as well as weed through all the advice out there. That's for how to structure your resume as well. In dog training, we say if you have an issue, ask 10 different trainers, you'll get 10 different opinions on what you should do. It feels like the same thing when it comes to resume writing. You get all this information about add these keywords, don't add these keywords, use plain text, use graphics, don't use graphics. You ask 10 different resume writers how to write a resume, they'll give you 10 different things on what will get you the job with your resume. So I honestly found that part a little frustrating. So if you ever feel the same way, you're not alone. But yeah, when I was writing my resume, the standard basic advice I think does apply of, highlight your most recent experience, your most recent education, so making sure that my certificate was up on the top. I really highlighted the internships that I did at FRCC as well. And I think it helps to have, a base resume that you can then build off of based on the specific job you're applying for. It is good to kind of tailor your resume to the job, look for what they have in their job description, what are the education requirements they want, make sure those are on there if you meet those requirements. Do they have certain skill sets they're looking for? If you can have those skills coming out of your previous experience, write that in there so that it fits what they're looking for in that job description.
I always laugh at these slides. These
Yeah.
are my old resumes, obviously, and you can tell on that 2012 one, I just listed everything I'd ever worked with for the software and device experience, because 1 year in the industry, I certainly did not have all of that experience at all.
Yeah, I don't think I even put a lot of my previous experience on there because it wasn't relevant, to GIS. Before that, I've worked various jobs before I ended up in the GIS field, and you don't have to put every single little thing on there. Just put what is really relevant to the position you're applying to.
I think that's really important because there are things from different careers, different jobs that are going to be applicable.
Mm-hmm.
I applied for a job once and didn't get an interview. Asked them, okay, how can I improve my resume? Is there a grading scale? Sheet. It was a larger organization, so they did. They provided me the grading sheet for my resume. It was this 2016 resume, actually. And they gave me a 0 for customer service. And I had spent 6 years working in a restaurant as a server, as a cook, as a host, and then doing help desk for IT. So I was like, how did I get a 0 for customer service? So I think you did touch on an important thing there, making sure you're highlighting the experience that's applicable to the position, but being mindful about the verbiage that you're using too. Calling out things explicitly as opposed to leaving that nuance of, oh, they worked as a server. Maybe there's customer service in there. There is, but it's not explicitly called out. Yeah, please.
One thing, I know this was a long time ago, as I've already said, but I agree with Meredith. The resume writing process is very frustrating because you're trying to express who you are and your capabilities on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And it's hard because you're with how many other candidates, how do you stand out? My workaround was back in 2017 when I was applying for Three Rivers and jobs. I was like, how can I expand this resume? And so I was like, you know what? Online, ArcGIS Story Maps was like just coming out. And I was like, how can I show myself to who I am? And so it's really easy to add like a short URL to the top or a QR code on your resume to be like, hey, visit my online portfolio. And then you have infinite amount of space. And it doesn't have to be a story map. It can be a website. There's Wix. Like all these things didn't really exist back then. But there's so many different platforms you can now use. I know people are using Experience Builder for their portfolios. But really being able to show your projects, show something visual, show who you are as a person. I know at the beginning of my portfolio, I'm like, I'm me and I like rocks. Like, and I have a background in geology, but here's my how I got in GIS, here's a little bit about me, and here's some of my work that I've done. And a lot of that time, at that time, mind you, was like very little work for internships, a lot of student projects. So it was a lot of bad maps now that I look back on. But back then I was like, these are so cool. I'm so proud of them. But they're all still live, so you could look at it. But all of my maps, I need to redo it. All of my maps are at the bottom, but it's like, it just gave me a really great point to be like, hey, here's what I'm capable of, where I'm at. I can quickly and easily add that to my 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and extend myself. So if that employer takes that extra second to scan that QR code, they can learn more about me as a candidate, and now maybe I have an advantage to my audience.
No, that's I laughed because I know exactly when Amanda put her online portfolio out there. It did kind of go a little bit viral. I was in a position at SEH, and GIS had been around the company for well over a decade, long before I had joined there. And Amanda's online story map, that was her resume, portfolio, and a story map, got the attention of our CTO, CIO, and he came to us and said, "Do we have this? Why aren't we doing this?" And I was like, "We do. We've been trying to tell you this." So, even though it was student projects, like just showing off that functionality and that understanding of the interconnectedness between these projects and storytelling and the ROI that comes with that, that gets a lot of attention. So it's a really great tool, to draw attention to yourself. We are going to have time for Q&A at the end. And as we are actually running a little bit behind on time, 90 minutes goes fast. Jumping into advancement a little bit, we talked about how compensation comes in a lot of forms. And I would kind of like to use this chart to call that out. So this is actual real data for 4 different GIS professionals from 2011 to 2024, and how much experience they started with at the beginning of their career and where they're at now. Hourly rate does not tell you the whole story. It doesn't tell you that the person in green gets 3 months off a year. It doesn't tell you that the person in red, had a challenging period with helping out their parents, and they had to go from a management role to an individual contributor role. But then that individual contributor role led them to them actually getting a significant bonus recently. So there's a lot that goes into a career beyond just what's the salary. And Heather, you talked about this just a little bit ago. What does advancement look like to you? It's not just about the pay. What do you look for as you're thinking about your next move or moves you have taken in your career?
Yeah, I think that I can attribute most of my advancement basically to networking. So when I left the county and worked for Metropolitan Council, they really highlighted external collaboration, which the county also does, but they don't advertise it. So prior to then, I hadn't really tried to reach out to different. I'd come to this conference, but hadn't really talked with people. I just showed up, did the workshops, whatever. So then I became part of the conference committee and started doing more with the consortium, and that just really opened up a ton of doors. So just learning about different opportunities, like you learn about other user groups in the cities, or I'm from the cities, or you learn about other events that are happening. You meet with people that are on the consortium committee groups that don't necessarily work around you or near you, but they have ideas. So I work by myself in my own department on GIS, but I have all these contacts with people that I can connect with. And then your name is out there, right? So people know who you are. At work, people see me on a website somewhere randomly. I work at St. Mary's University. I do a contract. I only teach 1 or 2 classes a year, but they saw me on there and they're like, "Hey, we saw your name on, whatever." So it's getting your name out there, and then people know you, and then people come to you. So then you have just more opportunity. And so advancement to me is just having the opportunity to do something that's interesting to me, to advance my career. And maybe it ends up in a salary raise, maybe it doesn't, but it's still like me growing in my profession and just people getting to know you. So getting your name out there and connecting with people, I think, is the thing that I.
Meredith, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. What's a career advancement look like for you? What's your next goal or your goal in the next 5 years?
I know, I was sitting here thinking about that because I knew you would ask. And again, I'm so new into the field that, thinking about advancement hasn't really been the top of my mind. I would say I'm first not a ladder climber, so I don't really have the ambition to, go from, technician to analyst to manager to CEO or whatever. That's not really my idea of advancement because it's not something that I'm interested in. But I would say advancement might be moving into a different job title, whatever that title is, because titles are meaningless, relatively speaking, like you said. I guess advancement right now is mostly continuing to learn, take advantage of educational opportunities, both from my colleagues who teach me their little tips and tricks and ways of doing things, as well as, training courses from Esri and other opportunities like the GIS LAS Consortium. So I guess advancement for me right now is not so much a job title or a career move as much as it is advancing my skill set. And then maybe I'll revisit the idea of career advancement.
I think that's a perfect answer.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add?
Right now, I'm not really looking for another position, but it kind of comes back to that self-reflection of like, what can my job do for me? And if I am going to move, is there a career or a path or a position that really interests me that I feel like I would receive fulfillment from? And that would be, right now I haven't found that. And if I do, I have some big decisions to make, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
But can I just say something quick?
Please.
Be careful. I think a lot of people think of advancement as being, like supervisor, coordinator, blah, blah. Look at the job roles, because a lot of times, especially for GIS people, if you love doing GIS, if you go higher and you become, say, a coordinator, you end up not doing GIS. So really think about like what the job duties are, and if you want to do the job duties, don't just look at the role that you're playing. It's a great point.
So, and that actually speaks directly to where I'm at, because I enjoy making maps. I like the data that I work with. I don't want to leave that. So advancement to me is not, it's not a new title, because the next title up would be a manager, and that means I'm no longer working with those maps and data. I'm trying to lead and manage the people that are then getting to do the cool stuff. I want to do the cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
True.
I'm kind of in line with Meredith here. So even if you're brand new to GIS or 15 years in, it's okay to have the goal of just, I want to learn, I want to develop my skills.
Yeah, and bringing that up, I guess, is another answer to what does advancement look like to me, because even though I'm not thinking about it very much, that's probably another reason I'm not thinking about it very much, because I am the data monkey who likes to work in spreadsheets and work with data and stuff. And like Heather said, if you're moving up, you may actually be getting out of the role that you enjoy doing. So that's certainly another consideration for me as well.
Heather touched on it a little bit there, but I kind of call this last section leadership philosophy, but a big part of that is going to be connecting with people. Geography and GIS is all about making connections, whether it's to similar data sets and how they relate to each other, or similar ideas and how they connect to GIS, or since we're at the Consortium annual conference, connecting with people in person and making those professional connections. So while this is generally speaking about advocacy and leadership and mentorship, I do want to spend some more time talking about what it means to actually be a part of the community. I'm on committees with all three of you, and that's how I've gotten to know you pretty well, and that's why you're on the panel. But what drew you to be a part of those committees, and then how has that volunteer effort played a role in your career, and what it means to advance, even if it's in a volunteer space? If anybody wanted to jump on it, otherwise I can assign it.
I feel like I already kind of said that, but
Yeah.
I think being in a professional organization like the Consortium, this is obviously going to advocate for volunteerism, but everybody has their job, and we all do have our day job, but we all volunteer on top of that. And so, yeah, that does seem overwhelming to some. It is what you want to make of it, but there are benefits that come back from it. So I'm on 3 different committees right now, looking to add a 4th committee to myself next year. But the added benefit is you have that ROI. You're seeing these programs come to fruition. You're seeing the mentors, like we're on the mentorship program. They come back and they're like, hey, I got a job. I've been a mentor in their mentorship program for 2 different mentees, and they both have had so excitement to be able to have a full-time job and be there. One of them has there for a year, moved to another job, and she's like, it helped so much. And to see that, being able to give back to the community who's been able to provide to me, obviously, conferences and networking opportunities, has been really fulfilling. It's also been great to be able to expand selfishly my own professional network. I feel like I can come to a conference now and I look around and I'm like, hey, how you been? How you doing? Like, you're catching up. Like, as Sam said at the, on our presentation for breakfast, like, it is kind of family. Like, you start to like feel like extended family. You show up and you're like, how you doing? Like, we just had Pizza Lucha happy hour. We got to catch up last night. Like, there's an added benefit to that of not just professional networking, but also like social networking. But also in the same aspect, being able to provide back to the community and really give enriching and fulfilling programs through the consortium.
Yeah. The first time I really started participating in the consortium was as a mentor, and it felt like a really easy way of joining because, okay, I'm going to show up at the annual conference, I'm going to talk with somebody, and that'll be the end of it. And then now I'm on the board of directors because, like you said, you get to build that professional network and you get a better understanding of what other people's roles look like, and you learn more about what it means to be a GIS professional outside of your current position. So Heather, since you kind of already talked about the networking aspect of things, could you talk about maybe something you've learned in a specific sense from being on these panels, from being on the committees? Has there been something that stood out to you that maybe you wouldn't have gotten otherwise?
Yeah, I think just Minnesota has a huge GIS community, which is amazing. And I don't think it's like that in a lot of other places. So I think just learning like where I can go for things or who I can talk to for things. I think the mentorship program is awesome. As someone who's older coming into GIS, I struggled for 5 or 6 years just trying to figure out what was going on. And I think it would have been awesome to know that there was like a mentorship program out there. My work didn't provide one. There's, nobody to talk to. So, it wasn't until I got here that I really, everybody kind of became my mentor. So I don't know if I can say like one specific thing. I think it's just nice feeling like you're part of a community, and especially as being someone older, when you're a student, you're coming out of school, you already kind of have that community coming with you, and you have people to talk to. You have your classes, your people, or whatever. But I think that was really the nice thing, and I think it's something people should take advantage of if you're, doing that as a second career.
I want to make sure we leave a ton of time for Q&A because I know I've seen some hands go up in the back already. So maybe we'll do some parting advice and then we'll jump into Q&A. And if people don't have questions, I can continue to ask you questions. So I'm actually going to go to Meredith here. What do you have for some parting advice for our attendees?
Oh man, I wish I had more time to think about that than the 5 seconds I have here sitting on the spot while I keep not talking about that. I guess I would say, be open to learning new things. There is so much to do in this field that it can feel overwhelming sometimes. And, knowing what direction you want to go with it can be challenging when there are so many directions you could go, so many different skill sets you can need. I would say really think about what you like to do. It is a job, but you also need to enjoy what you're doing as well. So when you find the direction you want to go, just know you're going to be continuing to learn the whole time, and be open to that. And like I said earlier, even if you go a direction you don't want to at first, you will learn something from it. And that is always valuable. So I guess that's my advice.
Love it. Amanda?
I would say create a portfolio if you haven't already. Get involved. We have lots of opportunities that are, minimal workload to whatever you want to take on, but there's lots of opportunities within the consortium. And stay abreast with the current technology trends. Like, I know how easy that is when you're in the job hunt and you're not in the current job and you're like not sure. Stay up to date. ArcGIS blog is like my favorite. I feel like random Fridays. I just like take time, I digest and like consume every bit of the new technology. It also helps me get really excited about new things and new opportunities that I can use the new technology in projects or projects that we haven't even thought about. And then I pass that along to my team, but then I like store that knowledge. But staying abreast is critical in our industry, even if you are a student or you're like, hey, I haven't really touched ArcGIS online. Just at least having a fundamental understanding of what's new and what's coming is really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm. I would say the more you learn about GIS, the more you know you don't know. So don't be afraid to ask questions because it's huge. And don't worry about looking dumb for asking a question because a lot of people in the GIS industry do their one thing and they might not know it either. Or, so you can ask questions and have a group of people helping you figure it out. And does not reflect your intelligence or your job skills at all, because there's just so much out there and there's so much new technology, and depending on who you work for, they may not even have like the version that does that thing yet or whatever. So just not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to connect with people. And I think that's big.
Yeah, I wanted to leave a ton of time for Q&A. Like I said, if people don't have questions, I've got plenty of them. So, but I wanted to open it up to the audience. Right here in the middle.
You didn't talk a lot about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That is an excellent tool for looking for work. Since I put myself on there, I get all kinds of offers all the time. And it's a great place to research, to find out there's a place you want to work. You can zoom in on that company or organization and see if they have postings. And I'm glad you talked about putting your resume together, because you write your profile in a good manner, like you're saying, with the current keywords of what's going on in the industry and what's happening. It's a good place, and it's free.
Yeah.
Of course, if you want to know who's looked at you, you could pay for the subscription, which I think is probably a good thing too. It's probably a worthwhile investment.
So running the mentorship program, we encourage people to attach a link to their online portfolio or their LinkedIn, because LinkedIn can, not completely, but in some ways substitute for that online portfolio. And it really is an incredible resource. I was just talking earlier about how as you network with people and add them on LinkedIn and engage with LinkedIn, right, they've got their algorithm. So, my feed is 40% GIS, 40% public health, and then 20% AI slop. So, but as you connect with people and interact with LinkedIn, it can be a fantastic tool for connecting and professional development.
Something to add real quick. I like to use LinkedIn and touching on what Meredith said, of like tailoring your resume to each job and its job description. It's really great if you just kind of have everything you have on LinkedIn and use that as kind of your standard, and then you can pull different things. But it's so hard when you're writing a resume to think on the spot, like, what have I done? And having to remember back, or the little bullet points of what you did in the action-oriented things. Put those on your LinkedIn. Make that LinkedIn your, like, what you pull from to be able to tailor your resume. And that had helped me a lot when I was looking for jobs. I had maybe 25 different resume copies for each job that I had. And I was just, like, there has to be an easier way. And that was my workflow for it. So,
and have your link on your resume, because that's another thing that people can link on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks. Staying on the resume topic, just a quick maybe follow-up question about your 2012 and 2016 resumes.
Not my best work.
With the constant, at least on my end, perceived need to beat the bot or get past the applicant tracking system.
Yeah.
I've had resumes that look the one on the right, and you upload it, and like one thing goes in the right box. But if your resume looks like the one on the left, the things actually go in the right boxes. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and this is a great plug too. We have a resume review program tomorrow morning. When Sam put the slide up for it, it said student resume review. I do want to emphasize it's for everybody. So come, bring your resume, or bring some eyes to review some resumes, because we always need more people helping out. Actually just did a little bit of a talk back at the spring workshop about developing your resume. And so we've heard about SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, oh my gosh, what does SMART stand for?
Timely, right?
Timely, yes, anyway. And I like to use that for the resumes too. So a SMART goal means a SMART resume. So being specific, and yes, formatting does matter. That's part of why my current resume does not look like 2016, because it's not about catching eyes anymore necessarily. Well, I shouldn't say at all, but there is an emphasis on the automation aspect of things. So whether it's an HR program or an AI bot that's skimming your resume, it's not going to catch things like those weird cutout bullet points I decided to use, or my Minnesota, Wisconsin map for God knows why. Yeah, but
It's pretty.
but I am not a panelist, so let's coming back to you guys, you gals. What do you think about for formatting your resume, and how have you put those together?
Yeah, no, I didn't send mine to you, but yeah, mine was very plain text.
Yep.
Because again, kind of going back to all the different advice out there for writing a resume, and whether it should be formatted this way or that way, whether it should have colors, graphics, yes or no. There's so many different opinions on that. And kind of going back to what you said about uploading a resume and it automatically reads it for you, I honestly feel like there's nothing wrong with sticking with a plain text, well formatted resume to make sure it gets in the right spots if they are using AI, to sort through it.
I would agree.
So, yeah.
Standard it's boring, but a lot of
Mhm.
times too, like managers aren't necessarily forking through it either. Like they might have some autofill system or a system that's giving them a quick resume, and honestly, they just need to read the text. But if you're going for more of a design role, there might be a different standard for that industry.
Mhm.
I know there's different standards for each type of role you're in, but GIS is pretty cut and dry. Like the one on the left looks great.
Yeah,
Well,
pretty similar. That's pretty similar to what mine looked like. Yeah.
And I'd say as someone who hires and looks at resumes, like that, I can read that. All I want to know, if you got 15 people you're hiring, like I want to know what you did. I want to be able to find your education. I want to be able to see if you're going to like fit the position that I'm doing. I'm not like, oh, look at the pretty birds or whatever. Like, and if I have to like search through everything and be like, where the heck did they work the last like 15 years? I want the information. That's what I'm looking for. Relevant.
yes,
Relevant.
Relevant
Yes.
is of course the one that I managed. Like I said, I just gave a presentation at the spring workshop about putting a resume together, and as Meredith mentioned too, like you're going to get 10 different pieces of advice. So really, when it comes to formatting, I do tend to lean in this direction. It's mostly legible. I will say I intentionally left mistakes on this one because it was an example. Also, I probably just made some mistakes. I saw a hand here for a second.
I think you had a hand first.
Oh,
So I have kind of a multi-part question for Meredith and Amanda. So I know that Three Rivers won a UC award this year, and I'm curious about, and I hear about Three Rivers a lot in the GIS community. So I'm curious about what you think makes Three Rivers GIS work so successful. Do you have a team that advocates for you, or is it kind of organic, like people are just interested in your work in general? And then also, what keeps you guys there? Like Amanda, you said you've been there for 8 years. What's keeping you there?
Yeah. It's kind of a multifold answer. I think a lot of what I can attribute to us being able to be innovative is our use of Python. My colleague, I think was in the back, very good at Python scripting. So a lot of the mundane tasks, the clickable tasks, the tasks that we would have to do that would consume our time, we've tried to automate those as best as possible, either through Python or we use a system called Zapier, basically like integration, automation, things like that that can relieve us of some of those tasks that would burden us. And it allows us to be able to be like, okay, what new projects can we take on and how can we be innovative? We attend conferences like this and we have lots of different users across the park district. We have different departments that have different use cases, which I think is really beneficial for us because we have an innovative team paired with lots of opportunities to be able to do things. And then on top of that, like I mentioned before, our team always stays abreast on what's current and what's new. And we're always hungry to use that new tech. Sometimes that new tech will bite you in the butt because there's bugs in Esri stuff, but then we pursue that further in like the Esri community and like pursue it and make, kind of hold Esri accountable sometimes for those things. And so I think it has kind of been a perfect storm. I know Brett, my colleague, has also been there for about 8 years. We're a team of 2 plus Meredith half, so 2.5 people really. Without the scripting, we wouldn't be able to do what we do today. So I think I owe that a lot of gratitude, especially for Brett being able to take that on. I'm a lot more of a visualization person. He's a lot more of a technical scripting person. So we balance each other well. And Meredith is also very good at scripting. So is, gaining some rapport in that. But I think those are kind of some of the reasons why.
Yeah, so I think that speaks pretty well to like the technical side of it for sure. I can't take any credit for the awards you've gotten and the reputation you've built. That's all you guys. I'm just kind of riding down on your coattails there. But speaking a little more to maybe the soft skill aspect of it, of what keeps us at Three Rivers, I think our personalities mesh together very well. We're very open at communicating, working with each other, and prioritizing things that need to be done. And if there's something we can't get to, we're always willing to shuffle things around. So like if I can't get to a task, maybe Amanda can get to it, or if she can't get to it, maybe I can. So we're always, working together to make sure that we get things done. But we're also not putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, I think, as well, which really helps too.
I brought this slide back up just because, what you're talking about it, and my experience too has been really that cohesiveness of the team and working together and enjoying working together. That's really where you hit that sweet spot of innovation and longevity, because then people are going to stay there, they're going to be able to explore. When people are enjoying their position, they tend to, try to go above and beyond. I want to win that award. I want to do this. What's going to take us that next step? I was just telling my mentee a little while ago, he asked me if United Health Group's my end game job. I said, well, I love the GIS director and I love the GIS administrator. So as long as they're there, I'm there. And when they leave, then that's a problem for another day. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I had one. I worked in technology in Silicon Valley for over 20 years, and it's a infamously ageist culture. And now I'm in the GIS field less than a year, and I was struck that all three of you, I think, mentioned feeling old or being old.
I was saying being in the job for 8 years is a long time. Sticking with one job that long. That's all I meant. I'm not saying anything else.
So you all mentioned it. So my question is this field ageist? Is it a red flag for me?
I would say knowing a lot of the community and being around the conference and knowing people for example, Jerry, who's been on the board since the early 90s.
Yeah.
And that's just not even just in GIS, but just being part of the consortium. He's seen a lot. There's a lot of value he provides to us being around in the industry. I think that there are plenty of people in our community that maybe are on the older side, and they are very valuable being able to be in GIS. I think the biggest thing is if you are on the older side, staying up to date with the current technology and not getting stuck in this is how we've always done it. And I say that not to you, but I say that to people I know even in my own, company, not even in GIS, but they're like, well, this is how I've always done it. It's like, well, we can move you away from the paper and we can improve your life. So keeping that mindset of I'm always going to be hungry for how I can improve and innovate versus being this is how we've always done it. I think that's the key. It's not the age, it's the mindset, if that helps.
If that's true for the hiring managers.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, of course.
So who are hiring managers, people who are making those decisions? Is there a tendency to look at younger folks fresh out of college who they may think have the latest skills?
I would say for me and organizations I've been a part of, when we are looking at GIS people, schools teach a very specific GIS, so that's not always what we're looking for. And actually we're looking at what's all your background knowledge, because everybody can learn GIS. That's the thing. You can teach that to anybody, but you can't teach them all the other things. So even this year when I was hiring, I ended up hiring someone who has very little GIS skills, but he has a lot. I do asset management with pavement, he was a construction worker and he's older. And I was like, I need the mentality of construction and pavement and all of that. And I know I can teach him the GIS. So I think in jobs I've been hired for, I haven't necessarily been qualified for, but I was hired for the ability to be able to learn it. So that's my experience with this field. So
You mentioned the hiring managers too, and I can tell you in my current role and in my last role, as a hiring manager, I was the fourth person to see the resume. So it had to go through the recruiter first, it had to go through HR first, it had to go through all these kind of check boxes. And then, the last time we posted a position, we got over 500 applicants. I saw 4, and I was told, all right, pick 3 to interview. So, it's a challenging question, and it's really hard to speak for the recruiters in HR. You hope that they're taking those keywords that we're looking for, because a lot of the time it's not about as Amanda said, it's not about the amount of experience or the lack of experience. It's going to be some of those keywords and those key concepts about understanding how GIS plays a role as a problem-solving tool within the industry or organization that you're applying for. Yes, sir.
This isn't a big question on anybody on the panel, but looking back to when you were getting into GIS, is there anything you would have done differently compared to what you actually did?
I would have done it sooner.
Yeah, same. I probably delayed another year or 2 before I actually made the decision. So yeah, getting into it sooner would probably be a big one for me too.
I don't know. I'm not saying I have no regrets, but I can't think of an example right now, or let me think on that one.
Mine I would have been more adventurous, I think. I graduated from college in 2011. I heard the entire time I was in my undergraduate program that we're in a recession and nobody's hiring. So when I got a job offer, I latched onto that and held on for dear life. I was very upset to have to leave the city of Eden Prairie to move to Wisconsin. And then once I got to Wisconsin, I was absolutely terrified to leave the public sector and go to the private sector. If I could go back, I think I would have had a little bit more confidence in my decision making, and I would have taken that little bit extra leap with a little bit more certainty. I think it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to go back to previous positions. We heard Heather talk about boomeranging back to the county. So I think it's really important to leave those bridges. Don't burn any bridges, and as long as you're moving forward in your career in a positive light, there's going to be opportunities for you. So do it with confidence. I saw this hand first.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I think I've been around the GIS community for 35 years and have seen and witnessed just a ton of people who have made successful second careers out of GIS. And so while ageism, I think, is a real thing, and I've experienced it indirectly, I think within the GIS community, there's a value that's placed on experience, just life experience in addition to, because we have to deal with people every day in our jobs, right? Doing projects and things like that. So I think there's hope.
And then I'm going to go here for our last question. I saw you.
Yeah, well, going off both of those items, I wanted to just, since you had that little, it was that slide you had up where you had the role, I guess, of career advancements.
Yeah.
I'm someone that wants to just expand my knowledge base.
Yeah.
How long would you, because if you look at a job application, for example, someone with X number of years of experience, sometimes that means 4 years of experience in a field that is an entry-level position, which is kind of odd. It's a little different in the story. How long do you think it would make sense to be at one role, one place, where it might be more, at least responsible in your career to take that? There might be times where something looks alluring, but if I only do that for a shot for 6 months, if I were to learn much of it, why would I maybe take that leap?
That is a great question. I had a little bit of that when I left my job and came back. Like, did I learn as much as I want to learn here? Could I learn more? Do I want to go down? So, that's really person and job dependent, I think. You just have to decide, you commit and go, right? You either are like, nope, I'm going to stay here and just get whatever I can out of this. Because I feel like regardless of your decision, there's always going to be another opportunity, right? So you're really just deciding, do I like this? Can I see myself doing this? What can I learn from this? You really need to evaluate that. And even if you do leave that position, you're still going to be learning things, right? So as long as you're moving forward and it fits your life, and think about like work-life balance too, like I don't have children, so that has never been part of my decision-making process. But if you're younger and you're thinking, okay, I'm probably going to try to have kids, is this a job that I can have kids with, or is this, so thinking about your life stuff as well as just your work stuff, I think is important.
Yeah, well, and also when you're looking at job postings, you don't know if the job posting is a strict requirement or is it a wish list, for the company. It could be either, to be honest. And so if they're saying they need 5 years of experience and you have 4, well, go ahead and try for it anyway if it's a position you're interested in. And it goes back to writing your resume for that job, looking at the skill sets and the other experience that they're looking for in their candidate, and how can you highlight that on your resume, to say, even though I don't have 5 years, I have the skill set that you're looking for to fill this position. So I would keep that in mind as well.
I think I know exactly where you're at in your role. I'm willing to bet anyway. My uncle was a blue collar guy, worked in a steel mill, and he always told me, if you're not earning or learning, you're leaving. And so that was a really shallow way to value a position. Am I doing both of those things? And do I need to be looking for a position? On a deeper level, I kind of commented earlier, right around that 3-year mark is certainly where I started feeling that like I'm very comfortable in this role. I understand it, I get the organization, but like, what's next? Am I just treading water here? And the thing that I've done in my last 4 jobs now, when I started feeling that way, is I started exploring new opportunities. And it's not necessarily in a professional setting. The consortium being one of those, I'm feeling a little stagnant. How can I better connect with people? Can I be a part of the mentorship program, connect with people that way? Can I be on a committee and start hearing where other people are at in their career, and who actually are my peers in this industry and what are they doing? Recently, I started feeling that same way, but as I said, I really love the people I work with and the data I'm working with and the projects I'm working with. So I probably shouldn't feel that way because it's checking all the boxes, but whether that's the case or not, I'm feeling that way. So I went and got my scuba certification because I just, it's that yearning for new, learning something new, experiencing something new, trying something new. Variety is the spice of life. So I would say kind of do that self-reflection on your role. What does your job look like? And then also look at those other opportunities. Where else could you maybe explore a new hobby or something that connects to GIS without maybe being GIS? Because now I'm making a map of where I can go scuba diving in Hawaii. So, and actually with that, we are right at time with noon. So I want to thank my panelists here, and I want to thank everybody. Sign up for the mentorship program, and we will be around the rest of the conference to chat. So thank you.